philosopher king after you.
Akira.
Have you any hobbies?
My hobbies are fast cars and fast women.
Hobbies are healthy. They teach you things.
Ready?
Welcome everybody to Around the UFL. We're bringing you all the UFL news this week. We have a lot of it going on. It's spring football. You already know there's so much going on week in and week out. Here with a big panel for you today. James Larson in the hosting seat for the first time, and I've got a great set of guests here coming on up. Ducky, my guy, the community legend to my right. How you doing today?
Good. How are you, James?
Doing well. It feels like I just saw you a couple days ago at that Panthers Town Hall. It was quite the event. And we got a new face here with us all the way to my right, Nick Thorne. How you doing today, man?
Great. Excited to finally, make my Around the UFL debut.
Absolutely. Absolutely glad to have you on today. And got to go down to my guy, the ref, the man himself. How are you doing today? Houston Roughnecks 12-0?
12-0, maybe 24-0. We might be able to cram an extra 12 games into the season if we might. But I'll tell you this is how we know how exciting it is for Nick Thorne to make his debut on the show. There's a crowd of people around him to witness it live. He's out there. He's got a crowd surrounding him. He muted himself now, but we heard him. They were there saying, I think I heard the chant out there, Thorne, Thorne, Thorne.
Hey,
Thorne, and I'm excited too.
This guy is a literal legend with all the roster tracking he does, with the amount of work he puts into it. I already know that the opening game, there's going to be Thorne chants in the crowd with everything he does for the community. So shout out Thorne. We love to have you on the show. And now I got to go to my guy, Zach Kallman down there. He's not in the hosting seat this week after the last 2 weeks. Zach, how you feeling today?
Oh, I'm living the dream every day and coming in every Monday, joining you fine fellows over here on ATU. Another good day. I will say maybe I'm in review period. One too many mistakes in my hosting duties. So we're going to give James a shot and we'll come back to me later
that's
on.
Exactly how it went down behind the scenes. The executives were coming in and they were like, Zach, man, you got to take a little bit of a back seat here. We'll let someone else take the reins. And, you might notice we are missing one of our special panelists. Mel's PFN is not here today, which I know a lot of you last week, you were like, how'd you get Taylor Swift on the show? And that was because that was before the Super Bowl. Now it's after the Super Bowl. So Taylor Swift is taking a bit of a break. She will be back, but obviously it's the day after the big win for the Chiefs. So she's doing something with Travis Kelce. Who knows what? We'll leave that up to your imagination. But moving forward.
Real quick, before you leave the stream, make sure you like the video. I know we're about the viewership's about to drop, but do us a favor, like the video before you go. Sorry, go on.
Hope they all go with them.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. And now, last but certainly not least, Jake from Panther Shadow. How you doing today?
Feeling good. Super Bowl's over with. So now, next up, UFL Season 1.
Absolutely. We got a lot of news coming up here on this show because there's been quite a bit going on the last week or so. We had a few really interesting fan engagement events there in Birmingham, Memphis, and Michigan. And we had some big transactions, which is what I think we should open up with. And I'd like to go straight to our guy Thorne because I know you are a DC fan here. And, look at that. The ref for president. How about that? I think he might have to add that to his resume.
That's what you saw.
You guys. Oh, man. All right, so getting back on track here. Jordan Ta'amu is coming back to the DC Defenders, according to Sports Illustrated. He has signed a contract to return. I want to kick it over to Nick right away because I know you're a DC fan. You've covered the team. You've been a fan of the team for a long time. What are your thoughts on Ta'amu returning to the league?
Yeah, he kind of saw it coming for a while. It was a question mark. It was getting late. I was kind of getting concerned, but now that he's here and that's, as close to official as before, the league announces it, I'm just really excited. He's the perfect fit for that offense. They love RPOs. They like one read things. And Ta'amu, he struggles with like getting to 2 to 3, which is why he's never been like an NFL guy, but he's great at making quick decisions. He's mobile, which also they like to use with, the run options in that offense. He just is the absolute perfect fit for what DC likes to do. And that's why he's back and why, he was Offensive Player of the Year last year.
I 100% agree with you there. And I think it was so great to see Ta'amu step into that role in DC's offense last year, because for those of us who watched the USFL in 2022, he was with the Tampa Bay Bandits and a team that really just never reached their full potential. And it was a much different scheme with Todd Haley at the helm. It really felt like Tamu just didn't fit exactly what Todd Haley wants to do with his offense. And that's kind of why we saw some of those struggles. And I'd love to hear Ducky's thoughts on this because you're a DC fan. You got Jordan Tamu back, and you have some interesting opinions on Jordan Tamu. So I feel like
Come on down.
you gotta take a stage here, Ducky. What are your thoughts on Tamu probably being your QB1 here in 2024?
I think he's going to do a good job. Hopefully less interceptions than what he did in the USFL season 1.
Short and to the point. I appreciate it, Ducky. Thank you very much for your insights there.
Here was this problem in the USFL. Let me defend the guy real quick, and I'm just going to say this is prior to twerking Todd Haley. If Todd Haley was twerking, there would be no interceptions. Very similar to if you put a Luis Perez bowling promo on TV before or during the game, great things are going to happen for the team that Luis Perez is playing for. Unless it's the Mega Bowl. I hate to say it. Unless it's the Spring League Mega Bowl. Because we all saw how that went. When MVP Ryan Willis, God, don't get me started. Anyway, what were we talking about? Twerking Todd Haley.
You're on topic. You're on topic.
Yeah.
You got a lot of quarterback news. And another guy that signed back, which, this one really caught me off guard a little bit just because I thought that Arlington already had secured their main guys that they wanted for the season. But Drew Plitt is back in Arlington. That's a guy that started a few games for them. He was their starting quarterback coming into the season. Then him and Kyle Slaughter, they traded some minutes there. And then after Perez came over, Plitt took a back seat. He still won the championship, but he obviously was the backup. Zach, I'd love to get your thoughts on Plitt coming back to the league and what you think he might be able to bring to the quarterback room. I feel like it's safe to say he probably won't be the starter this year, but anything can happen. We've seen crazier things in spring ball.
Oh, I'm not opposed to anything not happening here because you always know how that works. And even besides the craziness of this spring ball and what could change in like a butterfly effect, injuries are an issue. Mostly for the fact that Plitt's back. Look, it's mostly that it's a veteran guy that was in the system last year. If I'm looking at the QB depth chart anyways, I don't really know if he's going to be vying for a starting position. I think the bigger question is, can he make that 2 or 3 spot as the quarterback on this roster for whoever Bob Stoops and company keeps around? That's my bigger question. He's got a lot more competition this time around that I think he's going to have to fight with. Lindsey Scott obviously is very well regarded in the communities in the UFL as someone that has a lot of potential. So he's going to be somebody that I think is directly competing for Drew Plitt's spot. Credit could be competing with Perez, but I don't think Perez slips any lower than being the backup QB for the Renegades. He's not going anywhere. So right now, to me, Scott and Perez are the locks. It's really going to come down then to Holton Allers and Drew Plitt. Who's going to be that 3? I don't think Plitt gets up to 2 personally. Maybe things have changed with going back to the NFL for a stint, but I don't see him going up anywhere beyond a 2, and that's being a little bit reasonable in my predictions on this.
I think that's a fair take for sure, because when you look at Plitt's numbers from last season, granted, some of that had to do with Arlington and their offensive scheme, and when Perez came around, they really changed things up compared to how they were running things when Slaughter was in there and when Plitt was in there. But still, to your point, with the amount of talent, and especially now, we're down from 16 teams to 8 teams. If we still had 16, I could see Plitt being a 1 or a 2. But now, we're at a point where we're at 8. You've got Perez, who likely is still there. Granted, he still hasn't signed his letter of intent to sign. But there's still time left for that. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. But some of the interesting things that have come out this week are the rules. And we've seen a mixed reaction from people across the board just on some of the news that came out. I know Daryl Johnson has been around on a few shows, giving some tidbits here and there on the kickoffs and some other rules. But because of these fan events, we've also gotten some nuggets here and there from coaches, from personnel, etc. So I'm going to open up to everybody. First, right off the bat, I feel like the big one is the kickoff. The XFL kickoff is gone. That was one of the big innovations in spring football. I feel like the XFL kickoff is probably the most widely known rule change in all of spring football. I don't know, maybe there's another one that is, but I feel like the XFL kickoff is the one thing that people were like, oh, wow, that's really, really different. So now it's gone. What do you guys, Ref, I want to go to you first on this one. What are your thoughts on the XFL kickoff getting canned?
I'm actually surprised. Now, will I say I did like the USFL style kickoff, so am I disappointed to see the XFL style go away? Not necessarily, but it's one of those where it could have gone either way. I would have been just as happy with the game. but I was surprised to see it go for the point that you mentioned. It was one of the rules that not even just the XFL, but spring football was starting to become known by. We saw the ELF adopt it. We've seen the NFL go back and forth on looking at different approaches that were similar to it, if not closer to it, or if not it at all. So that's why I was surprised by it. Am I disappointed? No, not by any means. It's one of those rules to where, personally, I would have enjoyed the game just as much either way. Thorne, I agree with you, though. The PAT, if I was going to have one or the other, I would have rather kept the USFL PAT with the 1, 2, 3, but still with the kicker on the 1, and keep the XFL kickoff. That would have been my preferred. Am I happy either way? Sure. I know that people really like the XFL PAT though, so I can't be mad at them either way, right? There will be spring football being played, so my eyeballs will be watching.
Yeah, I am definitely with you on that one, because the thing for me with that PAT system, which is I guess the next one that we can get into, I do want to circle back to the kickoff, but with the PATs, a guy like Brandon Aubrey that went to the NFL kicking 35 extra points this past season, would that have happened? Who knows? But Zach, you're a guy that you've been in the spring football scene for so long. What are your thoughts on the kickoff rules here? Obviously, the XFL kickoff really changed the game, but so did the USFL kickoff. I feel like it's kind of a win-win, either one that you keep. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, I think both of them definitely have their place. I will tell you, I'm much along with most of the audience here, I think, or at least the general consensus, it feels like, where I didn't think the USFL kickoff was going to stick around. There's a lot more momentum for it. Obviously, the NFL's looking into it. The ELF has been using it for now 2 seasons and has been using it pretty well, might I add. And even now the CFL is even looking at it, and it just feels like there's a lot of good momentum there to where it's overall getting the best spot for kickers as well as getting returns. Now, what I do say came down to this is that, look, something was going to have to give. I said this on the UFL podcast with the ref here just last week. Concessions are going to be made. You have to have something give. This merger has been 50-50 the entire way. Honestly, I couldn't see them going out of the special teams department with rules without someone losing a chunk. I just didn't think it was going to be that. I thought it was going to be the XFL kickoff system stays, but we change the PATs to the USFL because, as I think Hal Mummy said best on this discussion, it's kickers in terms of giving them the most exposure, much like the rest of these positions are with spring football. That was the best pro kicker move for the NFL. So it kind of feels weird. You kept one of them, but you didn't keep the other one. And honestly, if you did the XFL with the USFL PAT, the kickers still win overall. They still get their film. Returners still can do returns. You name it. So interesting choice, but it is what it is. I'll say it again. Don't be, for those that are a little upset about it, that felt like it was the end of the world. Look, things were going to happen. This is a merger. And I will say with the USFL kickoff, someone said it was cheap yards. I call BS. I like more returns, by the way. Cheap yards, if that's what you want to call it, that's fine. But if it adds to scoring, which casual fans like scoring, by the way, then yes, I would stick with that. Don't say that just because here's the thing, it's a double standard. Don't say you want more scoring, but then get complaining when a system's created to help with the scoring. Pick a lane, okay? You can't do both. Stay in one side and tell me which one you prefer. That's it.
Zach, I completely agree with you on that one. And like you said, it changed the game. And I remember I was able to do some tracking of this during the season. We had over 91% of kickoffs returned in the USFL in 2023. And like you mentioned, it really changed the game from the perspective of field position. In the NFL, the average field position is give or take around the 26-yard line in recent times, which makes a lot of sense because almost every kick is a touchback these days. Look at the Super Bowl just yesterday. How many kickoff returns did we even see? Maybe one?
All of them were freaking touchbacks that I could tell. I have them
that's
recorded on my phone because I wrote the recap article. They were all touchbacks that I could tell. So you tell me.
Where you get 91% returned, and you also had the average starting field position was the 37.5-yard line. So it really changes things. And like we saw, a great example of this was in week 5 when New Jersey played Philadelphia, and Luis Aguilar just had the craziest performance of his life. But that game-winning field goal would not have happened without the return of Terry Wright, who put them at around midfield with just a little bit of time left. It allowed them to run a play, get Luis in a field goal position, and there you go. They won the game. And another example of that, which, Jake, I really want to get to you on this and get your take, is Marcus Sims completely changed the game with his couple of kickoffs in that Week 10 game against Philadelphia. Funny enough, Philadelphia is involved both times back when Michigan got into the playoffs. What are your thoughts on this whole kickoff situation? And, seeing a game, you were there at the game watching Marcus Sims ignite that comeback. What was that like, and what are your thoughts on it?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, seeing Sims play in Week 10 was fantastic. I'm not going to try to downplay that. But as far as my take on the kickoff, nah. I like the XFL kickoff better. I never have been a fan of setting teams up at the 40-yard line to start the drives. I know casual fans scoring, yada yada. You gotta appease the casuals because that's where the money is. I get that, but for me personally, my take, I like defense. I like seeing, I don't mind lower scoring games, so I don't like seeing offenses having it teed up at the 40-yard line for them to, go and they get 30 yards. They can get points with a field goal. I love seeing teams have to start from the 15, 20, 25 and drive the field, against a good defense. So never been a fan of the USFL kickoff. Haven't been a fan since 2020 or 22, and certainly not last year's.
Zach, any word on that one?
Well, look, I don't think your opinion's wrong. Here's the thing. My point on this was, again, I've seen people that want their cake and eat it too. Okay, you can't do that. So like Jake here is saying that he would prefer the XFL and having it where it's, let's have the defenses get a challenge to the offense and make it where it's that higher professional standard because it feels that way. I'm fine with that take. The issue I have is people that felt like, oh, well, I want my offensive scoring to go up higher, but I don't want to give up those 40 yards. So I'm going to be mad. Like, some people get mad when the scores are low, but part of that is because usually defenses get the advantage in these leagues. You're hoping that the teams that stuck around keep getting better. Offenses get better over time with the signings you get back, and that's how it is. But my complaint's not with or anything, or debate is not with him. I actually think Jake's makes a valid point. If we're talking the professionalism for the offensive guys, yeah, why not? I think if you're a casual fan that embraces that, hey, these dudes can drive those 75, 80-yard drives, that's fantastic. But here's the thing. When it doesn't happen, that's when people complain, oh, it's just garbage football. Oh, it's low scoring, riff-raff, blah, blah, blah. Someone made a meme last night about Super Bowl 58 that was great about the 10-3 score at the end of the half. It was originally Big Ten. Someone converted it to this. But basically, it was like the one, you have someone come in, casual fan looks at the NFL score 10-3. Oh, wow, a defensive battle. Frickin' spring football comes in. Oh, God, get this away from me. Human resources, please help me out. Like, that's what I'm talking about right there. So you have to live with whatever choice. I don't mind either one, but, you can't. The thing is, I'm just saying, you can't have both. You got whatever side you choose, it is what it is. I don't mind. If the defense has an advantage, that's great. It's football to me. That's all that matters. I'm watching more football, and these are professionals, okay? Doesn't take away from that, even if it is low scoring. So it's just hard. That's the thing. The casual element of it is what makes this hard. That's my beef. That's a big beef here.
Speaking of being professional, though, I think this is the one that I don't know. Maybe I'm curious if anyone on the panel here disagrees. 2 feet. I know to me, that was one of them that I really wanted them to keep the 2 feet rule over the 1 foot rule. And there is debate online. Some people love the 1 foot. Some people agree with kind of Zach and I where we stand on it. I'm curious. Would anyone here prefer the 1 foot over the 2 foot? To me, I look at that as a win.
I think I'll step in here and play devil's advocate.
1 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm like, it's not something I hold up very strongly one way or another. But as far as like 1 foot, I do think like the plays that were made in the XFL where it was close made for some really entertaining ball. And it is, Dean Blandino said, during the season that it was easier to officiate too, which was also a factor in them deciding to do it. I don't feel very strongly one way or another, but that I do think there is, it's not like a all or nothing, like, oh yeah, 2 foot's obviously better, but I do agree with the whole, it's NFL ball, it's easier to translate, although I'm not sure how much that really affects that, because if you're watching a 1 foot catch, I mean, like scouts are watching that all the time in college. So, I don't think it's really a scouting argument. I don't see that as very valid at all.
So I actually want to pose you a question there. Do you think scouts evaluate spring football the same way as college players? Technically, they're already professionals, are they not?
I think they do. I think obviously you have to keep in mind the level of competition. In college, you can maybe get a game where a receiver is going against a top cornerback prospect to get a better idea of like how he does it. But I don't think like if you're looking at like sideline catches, you're looking for, okay, ball tracking, you're looking for, body movement and, those sorts of things. You're not looking like, oh, well, he wasn't able to get the second foot down, so it doesn't count in the NFL. I think you can do that either way, whether it's, college or UFL or XFL or USFL. I don't think it really plays that big a difference in a scouting aspect.
But it's needed in the NFL, though. So that's the thing. Like, that's where I'm kind of curious. I get the college part because it's part of the rule set. But now, like, in the CFL, I've heard people too. The CFL also, they bring it up. Well, the CFL uses 1 foot. And it's like, yeah, good point. But even those guys, for the most part, the NFL is the top stage. I'd feel like that's some part of it. You do want the ball tracking, absolutely. But look, there was a fantastic catch Blake Jackson made for the Dragons last year, and it was one of those that clearly in the NFL, like no chance in hell it should have been caught. But he catches it, and it's like he's half out of bounds, but his left foot happens to touch just in. And I go, that's a great video game catch, but completely useless if you're trying to show it to anybody in a scouting department in any of the 32 teams across the country. Because, like, yeah, sure, he tracks it, but, like, that's complete garbage tape to me. Why would I want to look at that?
I mean, I think it's a thing of, like, you're looking at, okay, where was the throw? Sure, it doesn't count in the NFL, and, like, that might be an issue if, like, maybe he made the catch harder on himself, but it's just one of those things that I'm like, I think spring football fans care a lot about it, and I'm not sure on a scouting standpoint. Like, also, it's like edge cases. It's like maybe 3 plays a game at most that the 1 foot versus 2 foot really affects it. So, where it's a really close catch. We're looking at, we're reviewing it. I don't think it really plays that big a role. Personally.
Well, and it goes back to kind of what we were talking about, Zach, what you mentioned of like, do we want to go with more scoring or do we want to go with the rules? And it's one of those things where in the XFL, that felt like one of the rules that they had to create more excitement, and 2, create more scoring. So it's one of those things where do you want to go with that angle or do you want to go with the angle that the NFL has, which is obviously, like you mentioned, the biggest stage. So it's one of those things where either or, it's not necessarily a bad decision which way they go, but I see the argument for both sides here. I mean, like you mentioned, that Blake Jackson catch, I mean, I'm assuming that was pretty exciting when it happened.
Oh, yeah. It's a great, like I said, if you're talking like just on TV, if I'm not caring about, and this is the thing, we're talking about different levels of how people are watching and entertaining themselves on watching this game. If I'm just sitting there and watching it like a game and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, he caught it. It's like, yeah, it's pretty damn cool. But, personal preference is where I then go, did it really, like, I would know it's not going to, like, if I'm an NFL guy, I'm like, I throw that out. But, I would love to actually talk. Here's the thing. I would love to have some time to get in and talk with a scout again. And that's something that's a big mission of mine, is to start asking people specifically like, hey, what are you looking for in certain parts? Because you talk with a few players, you get some things. But you know how it is. The scout player kind of mindset, sometimes they're different. Sometimes the person looks for one thing, one person's trained on another thing. I really would like that because I think it adds on to this debate and discussion because you see these leagues mix it in. Even besides, the CFL uses 1 foot. So like it is in professional level like that.
No, absolutely. I really do want to explore and more. Speaking of some other rule changes, we're looking at the onside play staying in, which is fantastic news. I think that's something that everybody wanted to see retained in the UFL, where you have the opportunity to do a 4th and 12 or a 4th and 15, where the USFL, they had their 4th and 12 from the 33-yard line. The XFL had their 4th and 15 from the 25. Now we're going to see 4th and 12 from the 28. And I'm going to go to Ducky first on this one because I feel like this is the type of thing that Ducky should have some insight on. What are your thoughts on this slightly changed, altered onside kick, and what do you think we're going to see in the league this year from it being retained.
I like the 4th and 12, or what is it 4th and 12 still, or 4th and 13?
Yeah, it's 4th and 12 now.
I like that much more than an onside kick because your chances of getting an onside kick are slim to none, but your chances of going 4th and 12 are way, way better, and it's a better chance to come back into the game. And I always like the underdog, so.
And we saw it this past season with St. Louis and San Antonio, where, I mean, the Brahmas had that game locked up, and then St. Louis came in and just stormed back and had that conversion, and next thing you know, they were the one that went 1-0. Ref, do you think we'll see the Houston Roughnecks attempt any onside attempts, I guess? I don't even know exactly what to call it.
I don't think they'll need to. I think their score is going to be comfy going into every game. I don't know. I mean, from the get-go, we're probably going to score on our first possession every game. So at minimum, we're either going to be 7-0 up or retying the game. But realistically, I don't know if these other teams can even score on us. So that we'll have to see. But if it comes down to it, 12-0 is 12-0. Anything to win. If we have to, why not? Coach Curtis ain't scared. Are you trying to say that Coach Curtis Johnson is scared out there? Because I'll tell you this, he's not. 12-0, rough him up, all in even.
Man, this is where I'm really missing Luke, because I know he would put you in your place. And, as someone who stays neutral, I just can't. Zach, you look like you're about to say something.
No, I was just saying, repping Luke, baby.
Yeah, we're missing him on the show this week. But I'm going to be a bit controversial here because I am disappointed that we are seeing the XFL PAT system remain. And here's why. I love the XFL PATs. I think going for the 1, the 2, or the 3 is fantastic. I think it brings a lot of excitement to the game, which, again, is what you want to see. But at the same time, aren't we supposed to be a developmental league? And if we are, I feel like that's the point of this league. Obviously, it's a professional standalone league, but the ultimate goal is to work with the NFL so you can help develop their players for the future. Why are we giving specialists the short end of the stick here? I feel like they get overlooked too often in these leagues. And like I mentioned earlier, a guy like Brandon Aubrey, who kicked 35 points after attempt. And mind you, these are NFL PATs. So these are 32 yards. That's 35 32-yard field goals that he made, and he didn't miss once. And then we saw him go to the NFL, and we saw him miss a couple. So it's one of those things where I feel like taking the PATs out, and of course you want to keep the 2 and the 3, which, by the way, I noticed some people were like, well, we want the XFL to stick because they had a 3-point conversion. So did the USFL. The USFL also had a 3-point conversion. I feel like too many people are forgetting that side of things. We saw Brian Scott convert on the first 3-point conversion in the USFL history back in 2022 with the Stars. So in my opinion, I feel like for the guys like Brandon Aubrey, for all these kickers in these leagues that need these reps, like Hal Mummy said, it's just like the offensive guys are already getting enough reps. That 1 point should stick for kickers. But that's just my take. I'd be curious to open it up to the panel here and if anyone disagrees or has any other takes on that.
I feel like Thorne has to have a take on this.
I actually do have an interesting take on this. Sorry about the background music.
No, you're good. It's your fans.
Yeah, apparently, man, it's brutal. But me and Noah, who's in the chat right now, had an interesting take on this. I'm giving credit to him because he's the one who thought of it. But I really like the idea of they wanted more 2 and 3 point conversions, so you should move the extra point back to like a 45-yard kick. And that way there's still those reps that you can give the kickers and people will still keep doing that. But like it's still like giving them more of an incentive to go for 2 and 3 at times. And it kind of, you get your cake and eat it too. You can still have kicks, but it avoids that, it helps out that statistic.
I like that approach. I also like and this is, now we're going a little bit left field on this, but I mean, if you're going to keep giving the kickers even more incentive to come to this league, I think, you know what, if we're going to start tinkering with rules, let's make a 4-point kick, 50 yards or more. You're getting 4 points too. I mean, why not, right? If we're going to take away the PAT, let's give them something else. I want to see, and you know what, make it 10 points if they knock in like a 70-yarder. Let's just get them out there trying them,
Imagine being up by 2 scores and losing to a 70-yard field goal. That's 10 points. I don't know, ref. I don't know about that one. I feel like that one might be a little bit too extreme. But then, and it's no longer the XFL, Extreme Football League, which I know that it wasn't actually the Extreme Football League, but that's kind of the vibe that we were getting. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's frustrating for some of these specialists who, again, not only they just get the short end of the stick because now going down to 8 teams, now there's only 8 kickers. Now there's only 8 punters. Where like there's still other positions where you're gonna have multiple running backs, you're gonna have multiple receivers. These guys, there's so few opportunities for them already. I just feel like it's tough to give them the short end of the stick there. Does anyone have any other thoughts on that one?
Well, I think it's honestly that adjustment, if we were to make the hypothetical 45-yarder, it helps push towards something that has been a problem since really the XFL 2020, I would say, where you just have a hard time getting coaches to break out of doing the traditional shtick of doing a kick or going for the 1 point or the baseline number of points. Because it's the thing is you add a few more yards, you add a few more bit of risk, and not everyone is open, as it seems, to going for the additional risk. Now, I will say with the analytical mindset that you see coaches in the NFL and even college these days going for, perhaps we can see some more things opening up, I hope, because it has been trending that way where we're seeing the 2-pointers getting more accepted. We're seeing more of the chances here getting accepted depending on where you are on the field. So that's what I want. That's a good way of countering that. But right now, it just does feel like we're going to start leaning back into the 1 point because, well, it's the closest thing to getting that additional spare points that could be make or break for how we do 1-possession games. And 3-point plays are extremely hard to pull off anyway. So, it just feels like that's the default. I hope it doesn't come to that and that things are changing. But it's been a battle for about 4 years now. And it's probably going to keep being a battle until we see possibly newer blood sneak in to the scene. Kind of like Anthony Becht with how he took the onside kicks approach this year. I hope we see folks like him come in and start changing that to where we take advantage of the rules and make that excitement live up to what it is in the rule book.
Yeah, so speaking of some of these rule changes, there's a couple of little nuggets that I'm actually going to drop right now on some of the changes that we're going to see. Well, not changes, but it's just some of the things. So another reason why, again, I'm very passionate about specialists because I feel like they get the short end of the stick. And the XFL punting rules are going to be the rules moving forward. The USFL punting rules are out. The XFL punting rules are in, which I think is a terrible decision.
See Jake, you can see him right now.
I'm going to get to him in a second here. But so for those who are unfamiliar with the XFL punting rules, basically to encourage returns, a touchback is automatically brought out to the 35-yard line and not the 20. So if the ball goes into the end zone, it's going to come out to the 35.
Sounds
and the
like cheap
same
yards.
happens if a ball goes out of bounds inside the 35. So a punter no longer can do a coffin corner punt, which is very valuable film that they now are not able to do. They basically just have to have a perfect punt that stays in bounds, that does not go out of bounds or doesn't go into the end zone, and then have the punting team get down there and cover the ball right away, which it makes it difficult, and it's going to make it tough for these guys, especially, net average is a big thing for punters. We might see some rough net averages with this system. In my opinion, especially now that we're seeing the USFL kickoff and the XFL's punting rules, it's going to really make for some interesting scenarios for these specialists because, like we mentioned, if teams get at the 40-yard line, pick up a couple first downs, and then decide to punt, that net average is going to be really rough for some of these guys just based on how this whole return system is set up. Jake, the floor is yours.
Yeah. You know my opinion. You saw my reaction. Yeah, I'm deeply entrenched in Big Ten country, so defense has been a stalwart of that, and I carry that into even my pro sports, and that and specialists are people too. So come on, you got to leave in the coffin corner kicks. I love seeing teams get pinned and. Again, driving the field, like I said, with the kickoff. So no, like the banning the coffin corner kicks is something that I've never been a fan. Again, dating back to 2020, same rules that they've carried from 2020 to 2023 to this year. Never liked them since 2020. So this is new for me. I kind of suspected that was going to happen, so prepared myself for it. But no, for the most part, the XFL, you're not going to find me agreeing with their PAT, with their specialist rules. So this one is certainly one that I probably even hate the most.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one because, like I said, of course, it's all about creating excitement. You want the fan to be involved, you want the fan to be engaged. But some of these rules, like again, if this is going to be a developmental league, I just feel like we're selling the specialists short. And like a good example is last season, I was in Canton for a New Jersey Generals game, and Brock Miller, shout out Brock, he's one of the best punters in the game, and he had just a picture perfect punt, like coffin corner punt. It was out at the 2 or the 3 yard line. Everyone was fired up. And it's just a shame that we're taking stuff like that out of the game because I feel like it's so necessary. It's stuff that it's football. Punting is football too. So I don't know. That's just something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I'd say we're talking about, if we're wanting to preserve or at least give some specialists a little bit more, I would say better film doesn't really help that. Now, credit, I will say this is where I think, Nick, when we're talking about scouting for special team, at least special teams wise, not saying this is equating to catches, by the way. I'm not going to throw it in there and make this weird. But at least I guess if you do happen to kick a coffin, you can at least use that film for NFL's sake. It just sucks that the rules don't play into that is the deal because it's weird. It almost feels like, and I'm sensing a pattern here. I see what's happening here. So you have the USFL kickoff that already moves basically the ball in a much better position on the field, generally around the 40-yard line we're seeing, maybe 35 to be generous. Funny, the touchbacks for the punts are usually to 35 with the XFL. Is anyone seeing a pattern now? It's about moving them up the field. It's clearly what that is now being designed. Yes, the trade-off is part of it, but now I now see what's going on. It's about getting as far up the field from your own side to encourage scoring. That is exactly what's happening here, people. You can take that one home. It doesn't matter if we have to listen for an official. You can look in the lines and see that is exactly what's going on now. It is to move the ball up the field as much as possible.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and it almost feels to a certain extent that it's partially because one of the things that you see out of all of these spring leagues, really, but most of them, if not all of them, is them trying to speed the game along, get the game moving. And so I know it's a maybe not 1-to-1 in this comparison, but yeah, getting them down the field, get those points on the board. And, potentially avoiding the argument that we talked about earlier when we were comparing it to the Super Bowl of, hey, if you're looking at a game 10-3, you're going to get a much different reaction when it comes to a spring league as a pro league. Now you give them a little bit of a boost on the field. Hopefully makes it a little bit easier. At least that seems to be the goal. But very astute there, Zach. I tend to agree.
Well, on that note, we covered a lot of the rules, and I think it's time for us to finally bring on our special guest, the man of the hour, the XFL Special Teams Player of the Year himself. Darius Shepard is in the building with us. Darius, how you doing today, man?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? Appreciate y'all having me on.
Thanks for coming on, man. We're really excited to have you with us today. And, man, it's been a really interesting several months for you. You've played in spring football for a while. You were in the XFL, had a really successful season, and then ended up going to the NFL for a little bit. And now you were a free agent for several months and just came back to the Battlehawks. So what have these last several months been like for you just on this football journey and continuing to pursue your goals?
Yeah, it's been crazy, man. I was super excited to get into the spring ball world last year with the Battlehawks for year one. And what an amazing experience getting to go to play for St. Louis. In my opinion, the best fan base and all that. And then to go to the Chargers and have that experience. And these last few months have been crazy, not knowing what's going to happen with the merger situation. So a lot of question marks, a lot of phone calls and all that. But I'm so excited that, we got the UFL going and ready to compete now.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, you've been in the spring football scene, and I want to go back because you played in the USFL back in 2022 with the New Jersey Generals, had a really successful year there, and then you had, I think, a stint with the Denver Broncos, then to the XFL, and then with the Chargers. So you've played in both the USFL and the XFL. Now these two leagues are coming together to create one premier spring football league in the United Football League. What are your thoughts on what we can expect from the pros that we're going to get from the USFL and the pros we're going to get from the XFL combined into one league here?
For sure. Yeah, I know, talking from the top up with the executives and all that, they did an incredible job in both leagues. So I think with them collaborating, they're going to, do the best to make an incredible spring league for the players and the fans. Competition-wise, obviously going from 16 to 8 teams is there's some pros and cons to it, but I think the pros be super competitive, a lot of great players. And it's going to be a really cool game day experience getting to compete against some of these guys you've seen signing on different teams.
Right on. I'm going to move it on to panelist Nick Thorne. Nick, you had a question?
Hey, Darius. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being here. My first question is about your quarterback situation. Now, everyone's talking about McCarron, but I think everyone kind of knows what you're getting out of him. And there's a question if he's going to be back or not. So I was kind of curious, we saw a little bit of Tiano, and basically none of Manny Wilkins. I was kind of curious what your thoughts are on the other quarterbacks that might end up, getting the opportunity to be your guy this year.
No doubt. Yeah, I think we're going to let that quarterback thing play itself out as far as, who shows up and all that. But all three of those guys you named, incredible talent. I think we're comfortable with all three of those guys leading our team. And we get down to training camp, everybody's going to have to compete. That's what Coach Beck's always talking about, making it a competitive room. And obviously last year with AJ, it was a lot of fun, him bringing that vet experience and, the name value he has. I mean, he's a great dude. So it'll be interesting to see, how our offense is this season. And I know we have so many great playmakers. I mean, you look at who we acquired in the dispersal drafts and all that, it's going to be fireworks. So we're just ready to get to camp and get rolling.
All right, and I got one more question for you. So, today we've been talking a lot about XFL versus USFL kickoff rules. You obviously kind of made your bread and butter with the XFL kickoff last year. Didn't really get an opportunity because Kavante Turpin with the Generals to do much of that returning, and it was different back in the first year anyway. So I was kind of curious what your thoughts are with them going with the USFL kickoff. If you're, expecting to be the returner again, and kind of, what's the strategy there? What's the differences?
Yeah, no doubt. It was definitely different last year playing in the XFL and having that new style. People always ask me what it's like, and kind of just like a car crash trying to get around there and make a play. But I think going back to the standard NFL kickoff is not a big deal. That's what we're going to be playing in if you make it to the NFL, and that's what we've been playing our whole lives to this point. So I think we'll get a good product. I think the fact that they're backing it up and, allowing for there to be less touchbacks will make it more exciting. And, obviously you have to determine your strategy, but it's going to impact, field position so much as far as you're going to be fielding a lot of different kickoff returns and trying to set up big explosive plays. And that's really the biggest strategy. How can you get the best field advantage for your offense? So it'll be cool to see. I do expect to be back there doing kick return this year and punt return, and hopefully, making some big plays out there with my guys.
Absolutely. And I think, Raf, you had a question next?
Right on. So earlier, you kind of touched on it already that, St. Louis, when we look at spring league markets, that's probably the pinnacle. But I have to know, especially from, your experience, you've played in both the USFL, the XFL, what's it like to play in front of that St. Louis crowd, 35,000 plus fans screaming when, spring league, it's generally, the little guy that could, chugging for everything that you can, where this is really like a huge market. And now there's even news that they're opening up more seating. We might see 40, possibly even 50,000 people there this year.
Yeah, we got a real special thing in St. Louis. We are very fortunate to get to play for that fan base, and it's awesome. I've been in front of Lambeau Field and played there, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but just it gets that same feeling of like this is special, and you can tell the fans really care about it, and they're all bought in. And it obviously brings an energy, I think, to the team as well. If you're playing in front of zero fans, it's just kind of eerie, and having 35,000 plus supporting you, going crazy, backing you up, it juices up the team, especially like when the defense gets a huge stop on third down. I mean, you hear the roar of the crowd and all that. So definitely a blessing to be playing in St. Louis, and I'm excited to get back out there. And I heard, we'll see about the whole UFL championship thing, but that'd be pretty, crazy if we got a chance to play there for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to really bridge off of you guys playing in St. Louis, I've seen you've been doing some events down there. You just recently were in the city. You were just hanging out with some of the fans. What has that been like for you, just being able to interact with these people and continue to grow the brand of not just the Battlehawks, but like spring football as a whole?
No doubt. Yeah, we had a great time out there in St. Louis. I'm just over in Kansas City, so just a few hour drive. So went out there, did some community events, and got to hang out with some of the fans. And it was a blast, a lot of cool people, a lot of places that are showing the Battlehawks a lot of love. And like, you look at these big NFL markets and it's the same way, teams embrace their players. And I think the players should take a little bit of time to embrace their communities. And I think that'll help to grow the spring league itself when you get the players and the fans both engaged that way.
Absolutely. And speaking of fans, I think Jake, you had a question next.
Hey, Darius. Now that you get to play some of the old USFL teams again, what is your favorite matchup this year against the USFL team, and why is the Panthers coming into the best dome stadium in the UFL?
What was that last part about the Panthers?
Best dome stadium. What's it going to be like coming to Ford Field?
Oh.
Week one.
Like that. It'll be interesting, man. I'm very excited to come up to Detroit for that home opener. We just watched the Lions have a great year up there, so I'm curious to see how the fan base will support Michigan, and if they have the same backing, it'd be really cool for you guys. But yeah, we'll see. What was the second question you had on there?
No, just why is the best matchup against the former USFL team that you played, the Panthers?
Oh,
what was your favorite one? What's one
I thought you were saying, okay, yeah. So Michigan will be a good opponent. I'm excited to play them. I'm also, got circled Birmingham because they've won it back to back, and I think they're the top team, so it'd be cool to compete against them.
Darius, I love how you let it in with that. Actually, just going to throw this out here because I had a different question before I was going to do this one. Do you think the Stallions are the ones that are going to have the targets on their back besides maybe Arlington in the XFL conference?
Yeah, with them kicking off the season and that matchup of Arlington versus Birmingham, it'll say a lot, and we'll get to see a lot. But Birmingham's been consistent. They've won back-to-back years. You can't knock that, and they got a good roster. So we'll see how things shake out.
Yeah, I'm excited for the first game matchup here. Springstock, by the way, got to throw in that promo. Anyway, though, before we get into that sometime, look, I know your background here. You're coming from a program in D2 that just completely is known as the powerhouse of D2 at North Dakota State. I mean, dude, 3 FCS championships during your time out there with the group, with Easton Stick and Company. I mean, what for your sake, you're hungry. What is a championship mindset to you? How do you define it? You come from it in college, and you guys have been very competitive with the Battlehawks last season, just missed the mark in a competitive conference. How do you define that championship mindset trying to get finally to a playoff berth this time around?
Yeah, I think it's just putting your best foot forward each day and extreme consistency. Anybody can be great one day of the week, but can you be consistent over the course of a season, week after week, doing all the little things that it takes to be successful? If our team can come together in training camp, do those type of things, buy into the process, I think we're going to be in a great position and have the opportunity to compete in the playoffs and win a championship.
All right, I'll jump in for one more question. You went from a question about college, and then you went to the pros, and you went to the Packers to start out. You mentioned it earlier, and there was a lot of of the best in the league on that team when you came in. You had Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers. I was kind of curious what takeaways you got from them. How did they influence your game early in your career?
Yeah, I learned so much from that experience, getting to be around A-Rod and Devontae. It really just taught me, how to be great. You got to come in with a different mentality every single day. They don't take any days off. How do you find, the edge? That's one thing I took away from them as well. So I could go on and on about, what Aaron Rodgers and Devontae and those guys that were, other guys in that building meant to me. But the biggest takeaway is just consistency, like I just spoke about, as far as trying to, become a champion. Every day, you have to be at your best.
Speaking of being at your best, the Battlehawks have really made some amazing additions to the wide receiver room. And obviously, they've been able to bring you back. They've been able to bring Hakeem Butler back, 2 of the best receivers in the league last year. But now you've got the additions of Ja'Cour Pearson. You've got Jamarcus Bradley. You've got Blake Jackson coming over from Seattle. You also have Marcel Aitman returning. Picked up a guy like Jeff Thomas, Jerome Kapp. How excited are you to go into training camp, not only with this amount of talent, but now the fact, you are going to have to fight for a roster spot. It's going to be very interesting this time around where we have 75 players in training camp. Yep. So what's the mindset like for you heading into this new uncharted territory?
No doubt. We have some ballers in that room, man. It's going to be really fun to go to camp and get to compete. I've been competing my whole life as far as trying to earn a spot. So it's not anything I'm not used to, but I think it's going to be great. It's going to take everybody to the next level. We're all going to have to work together to pull to see how the season's going to go. I think it'll be interesting to get all that talent in the room.
Absolutely. And another thing I want to point out too is that you have such a really solid coaching staff there in St. Louis. And, you got to give credit to Anthony Becht, who came in and did a fantastic job as his first time as a head coach what can you just speak on what it's like playing for him? You know, the mentality that he brings to the locker room. I know everyone I've talked to that's been in touch with Anthony has just nothing but great things to say about him. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it's like playing for him and the excitement there in that room heading into season 2 in St. Louis with Beckley as your head coach.
For sure. Yeah, AB's a great dude, players coach. I remember when he called me last year when I got drafted by the Battlehawks and just the excitement he had and, you know, how honest he is. So it's been really cool to play for him, and I'm looking forward to getting back in there and seeing what year 2 is going to look like with the new staff.
Yeah, right on. And St. Louis, I mean, we're expecting some big crowds, and I do got to throw in a fun question here for you. I'm going to pass it over to Ducky here. Our Taylor Swift fan is not in the house tonight. Mel's is not here. So, Ducky, you're going to take this question because we've been asking every guest a very specific question. Ducky, take it away.
Yeah. What's your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Ooh. You know, I don't know if I could actually name a bunch like title-wise, but me and my wife went to the show this summer at Arrowhead, and she absolutely killed it. I didn't go in with a whole lot of expectations, but it was pretty cool to see her perform live, and she gained a fan that night for sure.
Right on, Darius. Well, hey, everyone's a fan of you over there in St. Louis, so we really appreciate you coming on, joining Around the UFL today. Wishing you the best of the season, and hopefully we'll keep in touch and definitely bring you back on sometime.
No doubt. Appreciate you, fellas. Nice to meet y'all, and y'all have a good night.
Thanks, Darius. Take care.
All right, later.
Great conversation. I'll tell you what, that is a very talented young man right there. Can't wait to see what else he's going to be able to do with in the UFL. And just the fact, like, look, I mean, you know, no matter what, we're going to get him returning kicks again, not only being a great receiver, but we're going to have another chance to see some excellent returns from him. But yeah, love the answers, love the questions from all you guys. I know I'm jumping in before James, but I just wanted to say that before we kick things off closer towards the end. Because, yeah, great dude. Love it. You know, St. Louis has got a good one to rally around.
I feel it's fun. Every week we've been having new interviews, other than the first week. But, hey, we had to give a chance to introduce ourselves. And every week they're a little bit different. Some are more fun, some are more serious, but they're all, I think, pretty solid. And now, what are we? Is this episode 4, episode 5? I don't even know how many weeks we've been doing this. 4.
I got 4.
All right, look at us.
Is it
we made it 4 episodes.
So I've been
off. Episode 5.
I've been off 2 weeks, and I've been.
It is episode 5.
So
this is our
look at us. That's kind of like a little milestone.
Yeah, episode 5. Unless you're a Panthers fan and you don't know how to count, and that is 4.
I was the one that corrected y'all.
I was going to say, I'm the dumb Panthers fan, not Jake.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 wins. There, I can count just fine.
It's probably because I got the
you
gamblers
going over
on
the
front of my
Roughnecks
hat.
wins now?
That's true, Zach. You got the gamblers on your hat.
Damn numbers
you know, I've
game. You
noticed
can't
we've
win.
had considerably less drama today since Luke is not on the show. But
Yeah, weird how that works out.
And he sat out for a reason. He knew he got put in his place, so he sat out.
Wow.
Oh boy.
I'm waiting for him to like rush in here and see him pop up on the bottom now. Like, let me in.
By God, who's coming in the chat? It's Luke Miller.
Luke Miller. We love that guy, man. If you're looking for Birmingham Stallions content, that is the guy to go to. I mean, he's been crushing it the last year. But yeah, that was a fun interview with Darius. Love to get some of you guys' thoughts on just, you know, we're looking at different markets now, and we're seeing finally Houston secured Rice Stadium, so their tickets are on sale. You know, we're seeing a lot of marketing pushes. St. Louis obviously is going to show up. What are some other markets that we think are going to be sleeper markets here, sleeper cities, I guess you could say, they're going to show up big time for their fans this year?
Well, you know, I think Arlington will do fine. Not Arlington, sorry. I think Arlington will do fine, don't get me wrong. But I think San Antonio of the Texas trio, dare I say, I hate to say it, but I think they'll probably show up the most. It doesn't hurt that they're in a dome. It also doesn't hurt that they don't have an NFL franchise. Historically, they've always kind of showed up well. I will say, you know, everyone gives me a hard time. This is, oh, ref, you're so biased. Oh, ref, you know, this and that. I will say, I'm worried about the Houston market, if only because we're one of the last to actually get out the gate to have here's the stadium. Tickets are available, which now you can actually get them if you didn't get a reserve. Those are on sale as of today, as of now. But I am seeing ticket sales start to pepper in, but it does seem a little bit less than the years prior. Smaller runway. Hopefully that will change this weekend with the Houston, I don't know if it's a town hall or what they're actually calling the event, but I'll be out there at Rice Stadium. If you see me, I'll be the guy in the ref shirt. Come and say hi. Come get a picture. I have a whole bunch of USFL podcast trading cards. So like you could have like a handful if you wanted, because the USFL is not around anymore. It's kind of, sort of. I mean, it's there as a conference, but anyway, we got a whole bunch of those cards. Come and see us. What was the question again?
So we were talking about markets, and what. Obviously, St. Louis is going to be a big one. DC is going to be a big one, but something else I really want to bring up too, which we kind of talked about a little bit already, is some of these local events that we've seen happen in Birmingham and Memphis. I was just there at the one in Michigan, along with Jake and along with Ducky as well, who made the trip up from Ohio. Jake, I'm going to go to you on this one first. What were your thoughts on not just the event in Michigan in general, but like the way that the league is making sure to get the community engaged, even though, we're going to have everybody in Arlington, they're still making sure that these cities are getting tailored events for their teams. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you think the one in Michigan went this weekend?
Can I defer my answer to the ex-USFL employee that spoke, that asked this question on Saturday? I feel like he
That's
had
between
a good,
you three
good
on the panel at the top corner. I'm hearing this, so
I think we might want to skip that one, but I want more of your general thoughts on how things went. Like, not how things went specifically, but your thoughts on what we're going to see coming out of these fan events moving forward.
I don't know. I mean, I think we all can agree that the Panthers one was kind of underwhelming, disappointing. You get to see what they did with Memphis and Birmingham, and it was a lot better than what we were given here in Detroit. And for whatever reason, my experience in the last couple of years is this is largely what the Detroit market gets. So not sure why the Panthers made the cut if they're going to make this type of low effort, work to try to engage the Detroit Panthers, the Michigan fans. So I don't know. I'm not terribly optimistic as far as the Panthers market is concerned, but you can look at what they did for Memphis and for Birmingham, and I anticipate the other ones, especially like the DC one's going to be lit. But so I like there's certain markets. I guess it depends on the market. Overall, I guess you could say kind of a lukewarm opinion on it.
Yeah, it didn't make much sense because like the other ones, it seemed like it was more ground level. Like Daryl and the other ones were like you were directly in front of them talking to them. Whereas this event in Detroit, you were like 50 feet away from like Nolan and I don't know that middle guy's name again, Ryan, and then Jim Pop. And it just felt like you were so far away and so detached from them. It felt like a TED Talk more than it felt like a fan event.
Yeah. Right. And like that level of intimacy that we saw in Birmingham and in Memphis, where, Coach Skip Holtz and Coach John DiFilippo were interacting with the crowd. They were going around, they were getting photos, they were talking to people. Where in Michigan, we had the town hall where fans were able to ask some questions to Mike and to Jim Pop. But at the end of the day, they left the stage quick, and that was it, and it was done.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I don't expect that to happen in Houston. If anything, I anticipate this is going to be a pre-celebration in Houston at this town hall. In fact, if anybody missed the UFL podcast, I talked about it.
He was ready.
I'm anticipating. It's funny because I talked about it as, hey, this thing has been announced yet. Hopefully they'll announce it the day that this show comes out. Boom. I was accurate there. Announced on the day that it came out. Now, let's hope that the other part of the prediction comes true. Just bring the trophy to Houston. Hold it in Houston. You might as well just keep it there. Save yourself the shipping, because we all know where it's going to end up at the end of the season when we go 12-0 after we rough them up. And you know what? We are going to go all in too. We're keeping that one. We're roughing them up and going all in 12-0. Bring that trophy along. Daryl Johnston, he's going to be out there this weekend. Anybody in Houston, like I said, if you're on the fence about this team, or maybe you were a Gamblers fan and you're not sure about the Roughnecks, or you were a Roughnecks fan and now with the coaching change, come out to this event. If anything, come get a chance, take a look at Rice Stadium. You get a chance to meet Daryl Moose Johnston. I mean, that in itself is, you don't even have to be a UFL fan. To me, that's a major win, because let's be honest here.
It is.
He's got quite the name in the Texas market. I hope I see a lot of people out there. Houston has been back and forth in the past on how many people attend, but I'll tell you this, the people generally out there go out of their way. And I think it does help. And where it probably hurt the Michigan one is having that stage, right? It almost immediately creates that barrier or border. Whereas, as it was mentioned earlier, when you have Coach Flip kind of going around drinking beers with people, Skip, I mean, I've been around Skip. I can only imagine what it was like there in Birmingham. That dude loves his fans in like the best way possible. And so I think that definitely hurt the Michigan one a little bit. We can hope that there's a few more of these, but I don't think we're going to see many more of these before the season starts.
It also didn't help that we had Jim Pop, who he was great. His monologue at the start, it was fantastic. But I think, having Russ being billed as being there with, Nolan, and then it just ended up being Pop, said Pop was great, but yeah, it was kind of a downgrade from Russ. And I think not having Russ there, really kind of diminished the experience a little bit too.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point there, Jake, because we saw where there were some questions asked that should have been directed at Russ Brandon. Yep. That got directed at Jim Pop, who simply didn't have the answer or just isn't in a position to answer those questions. Whereas a guy like Russ Brandon or Darryl Johnson would have been able to provide more insight on some of those things. Like you mentioned, the ex-employee who was there who brought up some topics. And then, of course, like Darius mentioned, it seems like the championship is probably going to be in St. Louis. That hasn't necessarily been confirmed yet, but, we'll wait and see on that one. But some of those questions that I feel like Russ Brandon could have provided more insight on that Jim Pop, that's above his pay grade. That's not what he's there to do. So,
right.
You win some and you lose some. But here, I think we're kind of wrapping up here on the end of the show. Any other thoughts from anybody on some of the topics we discussed today, whether it's rules, whether it's markets? Ducky, you had your hand up?
I just want to tell Lane happy birthday.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday. Lane. Hopefully you have a Pickle McRib on us. They probably stopped selling it, but you know what? Just keep calling. One of these places will have one.
There you go. Well, on that note, happy birthday, Lane. And then we'll go around really quick and just get socials from everybody. Ducky, where can people find you on social media?
The internet.
Fair enough.
If you're on the internet,
my guy.
I'll be a little bit more specific. Go to on Twitter on Thorn PFN, just like it's said down here somewhere. And there you can find my roster doc. That's the main thing I work on these days. Try to just make resources for the community. So feel free. It's completely free. It's in my pinned tweet. So yeah.
Shout out to Nick, who really does a ton of great work for the community with that. Ref, where can we find you?
Oh, there's a couple places you can find me. One, you can find me over on X at The Ref Says, but more importantly, you can find me at Spring Stock 3, March 30th and March 31st. Day 1 in Arlington, day 2 in Houston. Come grab your swangers because we're going to be having fun. All right, that's where you can find me.
Zach, you're up. How do you follow that one up?
Well, damn well I'm going to be at Spring Stock as well. A lot of us are going to be at Spring Stock. It's going to be a blast. Thank you, FCC, for keeping us on par with our regulations. Anyway, though, seriously, at UFL Podcast, at Around the UFL for the main ones, and then for myself, at Zach Kyleman. But for real, follow the podcast accounts. These shows are growing. It's been a fantastic experience for season 3 of these shows, season 1 of the ATU, as we're kicking things off early and often, and you guys are making the difference. So, yeah, no doubt. Join in, check us out on those socials, and the rest of these people especially. I always say that. Check these guys out. They do great work. You're not going to want to miss anything that they do, one way or another.
There you go. Jake, last but not least.
Well, I won't be able to be at Spring Stock. Going to be repping the Panthers week 1 in Detroit, but otherwise, social media, you can find me UFL Shadow on all the social media sites. I'm mostly active on Twitter, so that's where you're going to get all of the information. As soon as I can get information, Chris, from the team that I can share, of course, I tweet that out, so keep an eye.
There you have it, the Around the UFL panel for today. And before we send everybody away, there's a very important segment that your host, I'll admit, it's my first time. I almost forgot about it. But we have some points to give out. This is weird. This is the first time that I'm in the chair giving out the points. And I think what I might do is just give everybody negative points and give me some more so I can get to number 1 here? I mean, look,
Complete
you guys
reset.
can't tell me no. I'm the guy making the shots here. But okay, seriously, in all seriousness,
He's getting
I'll go
demoted
around.
at the next staff meeting. I get voted for I swear.
All of a sudden, you're going to see James Larson minus the PFN on Twitter. What happened there?
I'm going to see an Indeed listing. James Larson needed.
Yeah, hiring for a James Larson.
Football Insider, I have a tweet that has 1,600 likes.
More than mine. Oh boy. Alrighty. So on that note, Ducky, you get 1 point for the Taylor Swift question asked to Darius, and you get a point for making that hilarious comment right there. So you get 2 total points added to your tally. Nick, I mean, I know you're not a regular appearance here, so because of that, and because of you coming on last second, and we really appreciate you doing this with us, you're going to get awarded with 8 points. So you had some really fantastic questions, and hopefully the next time you come on, you'll be in the mix with however this point system works. I don't even know what's going on here.
Hey,
let's see.
You're leading me already. I'll just tell you that.
There we go. Well, Ref, how many do you have? Because I'll just give you the amount to tie Nick. How about that?
I have 6.
All right, Ref, you get 2 points. Ref,
That's the threshold right there.
I don't have any explanation for why. It's just so you can tie with Nick over there. Zach, you had some really amazing insight throughout this entire show. I loved some of your comments on the USFL kickoff and not being afraid to call some people out for being cheap. So we're gonna give you 3 points for today for all of that you did,
I'm shocked.
and also helping me, kind of assisting, giving me some assists there in the co-hosting chair, you could say. And last but not least, Jake, you've missed a couple of shows because you voluntarily decided not to join just so we could keep this panel at 6. So because of that, you're going to get 2 points just for missing those shows. And then you're going to get another 2 points for just all the great information you gave us throughout the day.
I'm giving Mel's a point.
Yeah, Mel's gets a point. Oh, should I get... Who gives me points?
How many do you want to give yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you know how this works.
How many do I want to give myself? I'm going to go with 1.
Oh, all right.
2 for Humble. We'll go with Ducky's thing last
There you
week.
go. There
Well,
you go.
half a point for Humble because he's short.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Are we leaving Tiny Panther
Hey,
out
they
as
did
well?
me so dirty in that picture on the Panthers post. Like, is there any way we can bring that up? Like, holy moly.
I was actually, if my
jacket
mouse
swag.
wasn't busted, I was actually going to make you smaller based on Jake's post. But my mouse double clicks and it's too much of a pain to try to crop
Ducky, is
you
there
out,
any way
so-
we can bring that up quick?
Yeah, I got it. Oh, maybe.
Oh, this will be great.
Oh,
Way to
boy.
cap things.
Ooh, I'm not good at this.
Every time we do one of these screen things, I think of the Brady Bunch right away. Here's
Yeah.
a story about a newsroom guest list full of
Is it
crazy.
showing?
Look at that. I look like I'm 4'5", man. That's tough.
Honestly, I didn't even know that was you. I thought that was someone else. Maybe like, I don't know.
This guy looks familiar.
The little bald patch on the back of the head. it threw me off.
If it wasn't for the ball patch, you would think it was a child.
That's what
Right.
I'm saying.
Oh, that's tough. Alrighty, well, on that note, this was Around the UFL. We really appreciate everybody who tuned in. And really, again, thank you to Darius Shepard for joining us for this episode. Make sure you go follow everybody on all these social media platforms. And make sure you subscribe to the UFL podcast channel. Builds that morale. Turn on that notification bell or whatever Ref and Zach like to say. And until next time, this was Around the UFL presented by Pro Football Newsroom.